An emergency declaration on the border, a congressional bill trying to shut it down, and a veto. A dance even stranger than usual in D.C. NBC 10's Drew Petrimo joining us from there. Where do we stand now with that order and what happens next?
Well, the Trump administration used its veto pen for the first time during his presidency, and there's really not much opponents of the emergency declaration can do about it. No one here in Washington thinks either the House or the Senate has the 2/3 votes required of the chambers to override a presidential veto, so that effort is essentially killed. What is interesting, though, is there is a lawsuit filed on behalf of 16 states trying to challenge the declaration of that emergency in the courts. And then also Republicans and some Democrats now are talking about changes to the bill, that the act that actually allows the president to declare a national emergency. And that seems to have some bipartisan support here as well. So that, of course, would be wouldn't account for what the president has already done, but apply to future pronouncements of emergency declarations going forward in the future.
Do we know whether he would be able to spend the money while he waits for all this to go through the courts, or what essentially happens there once the House and Senate take their votes to attempt to override?
Well, we still haven't gotten a definite word from the administration on where exactly the money is going to come from. So we heard from one of the president's top advisors over the weekend that that's kind of still being worked out. So they have to kind of say where the money is going to come from to actually do this funding, and then it will depend on how this case moves through the courts. If a lower court puts in some kind of an injunction or a stay and requires the administration to freeze that money before, as the case moves forward, then that could stop him from spending it. If the opponents of the emergency declaration are unsuccessful in getting a stay put in place and they are able to find areas where that money will come from, then they could theoretically move forward.
Of course, last week Congress got getting its first look at the president's proposed budget, including the $750 billion for defense. Are there some points of agreement, or are we going to see a lot of gnashing of teeth here?
Well, we kind of see this every time that any president releases a budget. This one is a particularly large budget, largest in history, $4.75 trillion. So, I mean, Congress takes this with a grain of salt. It's going to be delivered to Congress. It's kind of a blueprint for what the administration is thinking. But at the end of the day, the Congress controls the purse strings, and Democrats and Republicans said there are areas where they don't agree with this budget. It spends a lot on the military and relatively less money on domestic spending, including programs that are popular among both parties like education. So it's going to be a really tough sell in Congress, but it's an important insofar as it lays out the administration's policies.
Very good. Drew, of course, we've got a week off for a good number of senators and representatives, but we appreciate you getting the big picture together for us, as always.